This episode is brought to you by Garage. Are you tired of waiting around for your truck to sell or getting pennies on the dollar for perfectly good fire apparatus? There is a better way to sell trucks, and it's called Garage. Garage is an online platform built specifically for the fire service. Think eBay, but for everything from SCBAs to ladder trucks. It is free to list, and with thousands of serious buyers visiting the site every day, your surplus apparatus gets national exposure fast. You're not sure what your truck's worth? I mean, you know that's one of the hardest parts of selling surplus equipment. If you price it too high, it sits, and if you price it too low, you leave money on the table. That is why Garage built their instant appraisal tool. It uses real nationwide marketplace data to give you a live estimate on your truck's value. And it's completely free with no obligation to sell. Once you accept an offer, Garage handles the heavy lifting. Freight coordination, paperwork, and payment processing are all taken care of so you can stay focused on serving your community. And if you have apparatus coming up for sale or are searching for your next truck, visit shopgarage.com today and contact Garage. Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in for another episode of the podcast. Before we start today's episode, I just want to mention to you real quick a new project that I launched in partnership with my friend Taylor over at Taylor's Tins, Legacy Fire Cards. Legacy Fire Cards is a passion project for me, something I've wanted to launch for a very long time. And Black Friday in 2025, just a few months ago, we launched it with tremendous success. And what Legacy Fire Cards is, it's a trading card for the fire service. The caption is preserve, educate, and collect. And what we're doing is we created a collectible trading card where we talk about the traditions and culture of the fire service, from famous fires, historical pieces of equipment, the origin story of firefighters who have made an impact on the fire service, and then fire photos, apparatus photos, and everything in between. It is a trading card series that captures the essence of the fire service. And the idea is to create a collectible between young and old, where a father can share these cards with his son to talk about the job, because as I always say in the podcast, when we talk about the job, we're making the job better. These trading cards are exactly doing that. We are preserving the history and traditions of the fire service. So check out legacyfirecards.com, support the project, and now enjoy the episode.
And welcome back to another episode of The View from the Top Floor. I got a special one for you today. Pete Partridge, Newark, New Jersey, retired SOC battalion chief. Those that know Pete know he's probably one of the most authentic, no bullshit type of guys there is on the planet. I consider Pete one of my best friends, a huge mentor of mine, and I'm just so honored and privileged to have him down at the studio to record his wisdom and bring his wisdom to you. Check out part 1 with Pete Partridge, chapter 44, and then I did a part 2, chapter 45. So when you get done with this episode, if you liked what Pete had to say, if you resonated with you, go back, check the 2 episodes out. Let me know what you think. Now, no further ado, Pete's Partridge, Newark, New Jersey, Rescue Company 1.
Engine men can have love for the truckie. Beautiful minds, but we love getting ugly. Risk takers with a clover, man, we love getting lucky. You run, we chase fire, I love when it ducks me. Tones go off, house watch, read the address out. 1075, get up off the magic couch. 500 gallons prepared for the baddest drought. Who else you want on the way when disaster's Can't out? Even get a little bit rattled when you enter with exit apparel. Mayday, member down, they'll drag you. You won't get this from every Tom, Dick, and Harold, but here's a view from the top floor with Mickey Farrell.
What's going on?
Not much, brother. How are you?
I'm good.
I'm good.
Thanks for coming down to the studio. I know it's not easy to get here, but we often have conversations on a daily. I would like to think daily for the most part. I wish I talked to you more often, but just life gets in the way.
Yeah, but we're pretty much on the phone a lot.
Yeah.
A lot.
And I wish we could record those conversations.
Yeah.
So here we are now with the microphones. Hopefully we can get some of your wisdom out there, because
Getting together face-to-face more would be nice, but
Yeah.
with the schedules and both of us, we have a little trouble with that. But we get on the phone.
and plus that you're nocturnal. You're completely upside down.
Well, yeah, that's true, too. I'm up when the rest of the world is sleeping, and, you know, that's how it is.
Does that come from years of being in the fire department and just having a
I think
schedule?
it does because, you know, in my time, we were very busy, and Newark at that time we called it an after midnight city. We really didn't even start running till like 11 o'clock in many cases. So we were kind of like up all night, and just, you know, if you're not out the door somewhere, you're just hanging in the kitchen, having a good time together. And that kind of stuck with me, I think, because that, and obviously the rotating schedule that we worked was a contributory factor also, because there's no, set routine. It's days, it's nights, it's off, it's days. It's like, so what I found was when we were working in our former schedule, which was 10s and 14s, you really only had to get up early 2 days out of the week.
Yeah.
The rest of the time, you could sleep late and be up all night, And if you were working night, you could come home and crash if you didn't have a part-time job. So I think that's what did me in. And then, I was married at one point, and I've had a couple of live-in girlfriends and everything. But aside from those times in my life, I was out with the guys if I wasn't working.
Yeah.
So you just get into that pattern of everything happens at night.
You said you guys would start running after midnight. What time would you eat dinner? Because I know when you have the shifts like you guys, like we do it different. We're one firehouse, 25 group chart.
Yeah.
We tend to eat a little bit later because our tour starts at 6 o'clock at night. So we eat later naturally. Would you guys still be eating like around 6 o'clock, or did you wait until 10 o'clock?
Well, we wouldn't wait till 10, but 8-ish.
Yeah.
I would think that would have been the average. But sometimes, we would just go out and get something. Because, we were busy. You didn't always have time to cook. A problem for us was due to the short staffing, you could never leave a guy behind to cook. It was like everybody goes. So, but, we had some dynamite firehouse meals like every house does.
Yeah.
And the preference would be, obviously, to cook. Somebody would bring in the meal. Everybody took turns doing that. Not everybody could cook, but that worked itself out. If you were not a cook, you were a bottle washer, But everybody took turns bringing in the meal, so you didn't have to worry about that. And it worked out nicely.
It was good for us when I was a fireman in the Bronx. We didn't have a supermarket. The one we had was really bad. I think it was voted number third dirtiest in all 5 boroughs for supermarkets. So we never cooked from there. Guys are bringing the meal. Eventually, they built a nicer one that eventually burned down. But they built a nicer one where guys were debating, do we stop bringing the meal in? And the senior guy, I remember him saying no, because it gives everybody a reason to do something a little bit extra. So guys that would hang back around the firehouse and not step up and do the right thing always, they still had to do something that was right, and that was bringing the right meal.
Yeah.
And with that, you would get the nozzle, or you'd get to be on the inside of the truck. So bringing it in, a lot of guys fought it because you're picking it up on your own time. Why not come out together as a company? I don't know. It's funny. Everyone's got their own tradition, their own culture. That's why I think culture is so unique and personalized. You can't really pass that down. You can talk about it, but you can't really teach it. It's just whatever works for you.
So many things went wrong with going out shopping.
Yeah.
Because you'd get a run. Now you're leaving 3 shopping carts in the middle of the grocery store and hoping it's still there when and if you ever come back, or you'd set out to get the meal, you'd get sent here, you'd get sent there. All of a sudden, it's like, we ain't getting the meal. The store's closed.
Yeah.
So, it really worked out better to have somebody bring it in.
Now, when you were the rescue, were there another company with you, or were you a single company?
Most of the time, we were a single company. When I was in the rescue, we moved 3 times. Closest we came to being with another company when I was there was when we were downtown on Mulberry and Lafayette, and one truck, which is no longer in existence, was in that house. But it was a 3-bay house, but within the house, it was divided. The bays had walls between them. There were actually separate kitchens, separate bunk rooms. So you were under the same roof, but you weren't together, really.
You wouldn't cook together.
No. That's a problem. And now the rescue's in with 2 other companies, and I don't know how exactly it's working out, but when you're with another company, and if where you work is busy, it's always going to wind up with an imbalance because you're going to be out doing this or that. They're always going to get stuck either having to make the meal or starve till you come back.
Yeah.
So it's never, in my opinion, a good idea, and for other reasons too, but rescue should not be with other companies.
I agree with you that because it's a different culture. It's a different caliber of individual. Nothing against engine truck rescue, but it's a different caliber. And with that, there's more drilling, more training. You're going to more fires. So you're not around as much to take care of the meal. So they do get stuck with it a lot of times,
Right.
I've seen.
I mean, there's just so much trouble. It comes down to housework. You know, there's always an imbalance at some point in the road. And I noticed it most looking at guys I knew in other rescues who were in with companies. I noticed it most at meal times, you know.
I do think the meal's important, especially with, I don't like to say lack of work, because I do feel fire duty is up for the most part, not compared to your years, but in recent years, I think fire duty is up, especially where I work. Within all the boroughs, I feel fire duty's up, but the job is young. So prepping the meal, I feel, is a drill as stretching or forcing a door. If you prep the meal, it's just learning where you fit in. So you're chopping peppers, you're chopping onions. Then the next guy walks in, that's getting done. Where do I fit in on the process of this? Let me get the grill going. Let me get the sausage out. All those things, I feel it transcends to the fireground, because now when the tones go off, we've already had a drill of fitting in and working as a team. I think that's important. Your day is a little different. I mean, you went to 14 fires a night probably. For companies that don't do anything but prep the meal, I think it's important. So it's something we can't lose. I think we're losing that culture, especially in my job, just bouncing around. As an officer, you would work different firehouses, and they come in and drop a menu on your desk and be like, hey, LT, let us know what you want. Or, we're going to order in 10 minutes. Sometimes that's okay, but not every tour, because it just shows that, like, if you're not willing to just prep a meal, what aren't you willing to do on the fireground?
Yeah.
Different way of looking at it. I think it's both ways, but it does help you understand where to fit in and work as a team.
But I mean, like I said, everybody did something. If you weren't a cook, if there wasn't enough for every single guy to be doing to prep the meal, you were going to wash the pots and pans.
Yeah.
And I had one guy that when he cooked, his motto was, if I didn't use every pot and pan in the kitchen, I didn't do a good job cooking the meal.
Yeah. Probably must have loved that guy.
Oh, yeah. You know what I mean? Like, that was a nightmare.
What was your meal?
No, I was a non-cook. I was always
a dishwasher.
Yeah, either a prepper or a dishwasher, which I don't mind. I mean, most of my life I've been a single guy, so I'm looking out for all the house cleaning and everything anyway. So what's the difference,
So I know you're following still to this day. You follow what goes on every single day in the American Fire Service, especially in this area. What are some things you're seeing lately that you're not happy with?
I'm not happy with some of the chief officer stuff I see going on, and I'm not happy with some of the actual tactics that I see going on. I could talk about engine stuff or truck stuff, but I think there's more truck stuff bothering me right now, this minute, than engine stuff. And, just in general, I'll revert back to something I said in our first podcast. We have all these training resources available to us, materials, classes, instructors, seminars, whatever. Most places still can't put out a fucking fire.
I love that. And it's just so much truth to that. So much education, more than ever. And I think that's almost a saturation of education that we're not understanding the basics of this. We're trying to overcomplicate, reinvent the wheel. Everyone wants to prove themselves to the world how smart you are, but we're losing the basics.
Yeah.
Something you brought up in a conversation on the phone the other day, which I think it's important to talk about, is the secondary search.
Yeah.
That gets overlooked how often? I mean, do you ever talk about the secondary search, really?
See, there's so much emphasis lately on primary search. Of course, our main job is to save lives, get in and get people out. But it's almost becoming over-dominant in the fire service because we're talking about it so much. We're forgetting that it's not a standalone thing.
Yeah.
And I believe there were guys in the fire service who, if they could get away with it, would make everything else subordinate to doing the search because they don't understand the job. And the job is everything else that needs to go on to enable the search. You know, I honestly believe there are guys out there who'd say, don't stretch lines till you do a search. You know what I mean? It would really get ridiculous with it.
Yeah, I don't think we're even following what we're searching for. I talk about that a lot because what you're saying, I'm seeing the oversaturation of the search and the talking and educating of it, but we're not talking about what we're searching for. The basics of finding the fire versus searching for life. Always searching for life. That's not what
Right.
I'm not saying we don't do that, but what I'm saying is that when you pull up, someone's got to find the fire. I don't care who it is. You got to find the fire first.
You got to find the fire. You got to get water.
Yeah.
You got to be prepared to open up. I mean, there's just things going on. You have to be aware of where the fire is, and you have to be aware of extension. It is not only about doing the search. So we could do a whole thing about that. But getting back to your original question, nobody ever talks about secondary search. And what I'm seeing, what I'm hearing, listening to fires is not good. Guys out there don't know what a secondary search is, and they don't know when to do it. I'll be listening to a fire. I'll hear primary's negative. And within 5 minutes, I'll hear, give me a secondary search. No. The secondary search comes when the fire is well knocked down, when you can really see what you're doing, when you're not worried about other things like fire control and extension, and when you have time to really go through the rooms and make sure you didn't miss anybody. So if I hear a chief say, give me a secondary search, within 5 or 10 minutes after the primary search comes back negative, that's wrong. He's doing it too soon. And if I hear them say secondary search negative 5 or 10 minutes after he gives it to him, that's wrong. They're not taking their time to do it properly. So, long story short, you're doing it wrong.
You have to be deliberate with the secondary search. The primary search, right? Again, searching for life versus fire, that's a whole different conversation. It's more of an urgent type search.
Right.
We're moving quickly. There's a tempo, there's a flow to it. Secondary, more deliberate. Slow down. Even when I give a secondary search, when the chief says, hey, get up and get me a secondary. If I walk in and it's an SRO, it's one room, and there's nothing going on in there, I still wait probably longer than I should to give that report, just so it doesn't sound like I half-assed it, because it is a deliberate, very detailed search. And I remember being a young fireman thinking, are these bosses crazy or what? You know, and then as time goes on, you realize, no, that's how it's done, is that you would go in and you would empty someone's closet out. You would flip the bed. You would rip the entire apartment apart to the point where you almost think it's too much, but it's not. Like, it's the secondary search. It's very deliberate. It's very detailed. That's everything in this job where we've lost the details, even to the point of the secondary search and what it means, you know?
Exactly right. And I feel like, I won't say it's an epidemic. I won't even say it's common, but I'll feel comfortable saying more often lately, I'm seeing stories in the news about bodies being found after the fire department left.
Yeah.
Okay? You didn't do it right, guys. What I often see being done or hear being done is what they're really doing in effect is they're doing 2 primary searches.
Yeah.
Because they're doing them back to back and they're blowing through both of them.
And I think it gets overlooked a lot of times when you do have a mayday at a fire that gets corrected, or you have a close call where something may have gone wrong, where it changes the tempo of the fire. Once you change the tempo just a little bit, it's hard to get back on track to realign yourself with the flow of that fire. And with that, we lose the details because now things are kind of shaken up. It's like a snow globe. You shake it up, and everything looks a little cloudy. That's where we're missing the details of something like the secondary search.
Yeah, it needs to be not only just talked about, it needs to be taught. It needs to be, I mean, when I went on the job, it was handed down to me.
Yeah.
This is how it's done. And, you know, when I went to the ladder company, the guys walked me through it. This is how we do it. When I went to the rescue, in our culture, in our department, ultimately the rescue was responsible to make sure nobody got left behind. And my boss told me the first day I walked in the house, God help you if you miss somebody in the secondary search. Bad enough you missed them in the primary, but God help you if we leave here and somebody comes up with a body after we're gone.
And I think it's also important to emphasize that it's got to be a different company that conducted the primary search.
Absolutely.
And I think that, that gets mixed up in understaffing of companies and departments in the nation, is that they feel maybe they don't have enough guys to give the secondary. You need a couple guys up there, but it has to be different guys. You have to get a different set of eyes on what that environment is.
Because it's too easy to say, oh, I looked there. I know that's good. It's too easy.
Yeah.
It's really a topic that's very much faded into the background, and everybody's so worried about that primary search now that we're not thinking beyond that, So I would love to see that get squared away. I really would.
Where does that start? Does that start maybe from the chief level, or are they overstepping sometimes where they are prompting you too soon to give an answer?
Well, that kind of dovetails with another thing I'd like to talk about, which is how some chiefs are running a fire in general, with too much prompting. But just to stick to the point for a minute, if you have a chief on the floor, it can be his decision to say, I think this fire is enough under control. We're at a point where we can do the secondaries. If not, no chief on the floor, then it should be up to the ladder company boss, the truck boss. He should be the one to make that call. I think we've gotten everything done here that needs to be immediately done. Now's the time to do the secondary.
Yeah, I've seen chiefs in my job. They do a great job with that conversation where the command staff in the street, the fire sector, how we looking? We looking good. All right, get me secondaries. And chief, hold on one second. We're gonna hit this room once more, and then we'll get you secondaries. So I've seen very good from my job as far as that conversation.
No chief from the street, and I hear this happening, and it's wrong. No chief standing out on the street should be telling you, give me a secondary, because he doesn't know what the hell's going on inside.
Yeah.
He doesn't know. He's not there.
Yeah.
He's not there. That's another thing. It's wrong. I'll not hesitate to use that. I know a lot of guys get in, it's this and that, and you can't say something's wrong. No, it's fucking wrong, okay, guys? It's fucking wrong.
Well, there you have it. It's wrong, right? No, but it is. And there's so much value in what you say by saying it's wrong, because I don't think people even realize that they're doing it wrong. I don't think they were ever taught the right way.
Correct. There's been so much lost in the fire service lately. And, everybody knows the story. Big exodus from the job in the years post 9/11. All the war years guys are gone now, and there was a gap in many departments hiring and whatever. And I was talking to a guy from your job the other day who was telling me, most of the guys are 10 years or less.
Yeah.
And then there's a few senior guys. There's a huge gap in between. And if you're not getting that fire experience, or nobody's there in that middle range to pass things down to you, when that group of guys at the top leave, now what,
We're very much in the situation we were 2003 to 5 in my job. It's almost like we are reliving it once again, where it's incredibly young, but I don't think it's a bad thing, because what I've seen from the guys coming on, the caliber of guys coming on the job, they'll do anything you tell them to do.
Yeah.
The problem is, and the gap is, young officers that don't have a lot of time.
Yes.
Because now we can't tell the next generation coming out. It's not even about drilling or training. It's like the basics of the secondary search. When you are in there and say, all right, guys, chief wants to do a secondary, rip this place apart.
Yeah.
That is the translation that's been lost, and I see that.
Absolutely.
And it trickles up. Everyone says it's trickling down. the job is trickling up in the younger generation now, where on the command staff level is very inexperienced. Not all, some really incredible chiefs to this day. We'll always have incredible chiefs in my job.
Right.
But the influx of the young generation is being pushed upward. It's not trickling down.
Yeah, but I mean, it's the same way in Newark. It's a very young job right now, very young job. And you're missing a lot of those guys that could be doing this, passing on, the handing down of information. And the other thing you run into, obviously we've talked about this 100 times, lack of work. You don't get a chance to get the experience. But you've also got some guys that, for whatever reason, and I'm not necessarily passing judgment on why it happened or whatever, but they were in a slow house as a fireman. So they got even less experience in a place where there's not a lot to go around to begin with. Yeah. Then they got promoted. They were still in a slow area. Now they're a chief. What do they bring into the table at that point?
Well, that's where, I'm a firm believer in letting your people work, and we've talked about this many times, but how do you let someone do something that you don't know what to do in? It's like if you're in the street looking up, you have no clue what's going on in that fire building because you've never experienced it. You've never lived it. Yeah. So how do you let the people work? And this is where micromanaging and overstepping a lot of time comes in from the command staff level to the guys on the fire floor. When the guys on the fire floor are saying, what is he talking about? That's not what's happening in here right now. Why is he even saying that on the radio? Yeah. And that's where, I know we've talked about this in the past as well, but micromanaging is a problem. I don't think it comes out of hatred or out of insecurities. I think it comes out of fear a lot of times, where they're scared to let you make that mistake because ultimately it reflects them.
That's true. And I think also they don't know what they should be doing. I hear chiefs saying, give me a primary to the trucks. Give me a primary. Well, that's a problem. Why? Because the trucks should be pre-assigned to do that. If you're the first due truck, that's what you're doing. That's one of your basic tasks. A chief shouldn't be telling you to do that. First of all, your department should have SOPs that spell that out. Your SOPs should tell you where the first due truck goes, where the second due truck goes. But even if you're in a department that doesn't have this stuff really written down pat, you should know it among yourselves. You should develop this, even if every division has their own thing or every tour has their own thing. Everybody should know what it is. If a chief is saying on the air, give me a primary, either there's something seriously wrong with your basic procedures or he's micromanaging. He should never have to tell you to do that. When you think about it, telling a truck to give me a primary is like telling an engine to stretch a line. It's that basic.
Well, I think the basics of that is that's what happens a lot of times. I feel not so much in our area here. I think more of a national level where you can be assigned search or suppression. You hear on the radios like, engine one's approaching the scene. What do you want us? You want us to search or stretch a line? No, you're an engine company. You're stretching the line. This is basic firefighting 101, the way we look at things. I think on a national level, though, I think it does get divided up on arrival of what to do. But this is where it gets blurry, is that we're not forward-thinking firemen anymore. We don't have that mindset to pull in and transform the mindset, the skill set to understand, to size up the situation, see what has to get done, and still realize the search is always number one, but it's either find the fire or go above and look for life. But you have to know that when you pull up. And by chiefs prompting you to do these things, I don't know if it's that they don't understand where to fit in or if they're trying to place the pieces in position.
I think it could be a number of different things, or it could be dependent on the chief. In some cases, they may not know where they fit in. They may not know what their real job is because, again, who's training them? Where that's another topic, officer training programs. But maybe they feel like they need to be saying something on the radio or they're not doing their job. So they're just saying things, like silence is golden, guys. Remember that. Don't clog the air with useless transmissions. But I think some of these guys feel like if I'm not saying something every 2 minutes or whatever, I'm not doing my job. If I'm not giving some kind of order or some kind of direction, I'm not doing my job. But the chiefs in my day, to a man, you know what they all said? They said, these fires run themselves. I don't have to do shit unless something goes sideways. Everybody knows what to do. All I got to do is keep them out of trouble and keep them safe. The fires run themselves. We've lost that, and that's what we have to get back.
I love that. How many years were you chief? And were you only a SOC chief, or were you a battalion chief as well?
No, I was a SOC chief, but I would work overtime in the
Yeah.
field. I would cover for guys in the field, and I would go to SOC incidents. But, you know, when I did, or if I was a captain acting as a chief, when I did have a fire, I found that pretty much.
Yeah.
Guys know what to do. Fires ran themselves. You would put in a suggestion every once in a while. You know, you might, for example, say, you know what, I think we really need to hit this with the deck pipe for a minute, because guys' natural reaction is they want to get inside with that line. You might do something like that. You know, you might, and in fact, that would be your job to the first due company, of course, is going to set the initial strategy. But once the chief gets there, he has to assess it. And he has to say either this is the right strategy or it's the wrong strategy. And if it's the wrong strategy, he's got to correct it. But in a good fire department, he's rarely correcting it.
Yeah.
You know, guys know what to do. They know, oh, this thing's right now really ripping, roaring. We're really not going to get in there too quick with a hand line. Let's knock it down quick and then get in there. That's the kind of thing a chief needs to be worried about. And he needs to be worried about, is anything really stupid going on in here? You know what I mean? So we put chiefs inside. And in my opinion, a lot of the fires, we have too many inside. Don't need 3 chiefs in a 3-story frame. You don't. You don't need a chief on every floor. You don't. And if you have one on every floor, he's tending to micromanage, and then the company officers are not developing properly. They're not getting a chance to make decisions. Better idea is to have a chief for every 2 or 3 floors, coordinating between the floors. For example, if I have 3 chiefs in a 3-story frame, and each chief is worried about his own floor, then I still don't have a guy who knows what's going on the other floors. But if I have a chief in the stairwell or in the hallway coordinating a couple of floors, he's going to make sure that the guys on the floor above don't get in trouble, because he's going to make sure that the line on the floor below is still pushing in. And if it's not pushing in, he's the guy that's going to realize it and slow down the guys that are on the floor above. That's what an interior chief does. And you don't need one on every floor in a small building, 2.5-story frame, 3-story frame.
I had a fire the other day. They had a sidewalk sector. That kind of threw me for a loop. I never heard that terminology on the radio, but
No, I didn't. I never did.
live and learn, right? What about command from the car? How do you feel about the chief staying in the car a block away?
No, absolutely not.
Yeah.
I think you need to be in front of the building to get the feel of the fire.
Yeah.
You know, I think you need to see for yourself as much as you can. You know, we talk about the 360, which maybe can or can't be done depending on so many things. But in my day, the chief would either do it personally, leaving his aide at the command post, or he'd have the aide do it while he stayed at the command post. But they didn't sit back out in the car. Let's extrapolate that. If I sit in the car, running the fire from the car, who the fuck needs me? I can do that from headquarters. Yep. I really can. I sit in my house and I listen to fires on the scanner, and I can actually call shots from my house. Like I said, hey, it ought to be a second alarm by now, and then it'll be a second alarm a couple minutes later. Or they miss this or they miss that. And I don't even have the benefit of a camera on the scene or anything to show me what's going on. I'm just listening to the radio. So imagine this. Why don't I just have an EOC, Emergency Operations Center, in headquarters, and I send a drone to the fire? And I watch the whole fire. I've got the radio next to my ear. I've got a TV screen. I just run everything from my desk. Why do I even go out and get in the car and go? Nobody needs me sitting in the car half a block away. To me, that's bullshit.
Yeah. I think what a lot of times we don't understand and don't realize is that, to me and to you and to many others listening, I'm sure, the fireground is a true art form. And when you're not experiencing that moment in every detail, from the smell to the wind, to what you're seeing, what you're hearing, those are all very important details of running a fire, to making sure it's running properly, you lose all that by having the chief sitting in a car. Some people really, really believe in this. I don't debate on it much. It doesn't really affect my life. But when I do talk about it, the argument usually goes, well, you have to have officers you can trust to give you the information. And that's a pretty poor argument, in my opinion.
Yeah, because it's putting even more of a burden on them. And God knows they already have enough of a burden. Now they're partially doing your job for you. In my opinion, get out there where you belong. You don't like the weather? Get them to put up a tent over your head with a portable space heater or something. What do you want? You know what I mean? I just don't see it. I just don't see it. You're too isolated. And like I say, if that's what you're going to do, I don't need you there at all. I can literally do this from an EOC.
It's also important that the chief should be the most senior guy in the job. That's not the case in many places, but it definitely should be. You should be one of the more senior guys with the most experience, if not a majority of them experience, where you can look at something and say, I've seen this before. This is about to happen. You already know 3-10 steps ahead of what's going to happen in that moment because you've already lived that fire before. Not the exact fire, but one similar. Right. Remove that experience away from already a very inexperienced fireground. You're setting up the fireground for failure.
Absolutely. If you're down the block someplace, you might not see that sign of a flash over, backdraft, or some kind of rapid fire event.
Or just that instinct in your gut that you feel from going to fires. You can look at things and just say, you know what, it's time. Everyone out. Because you're living the fire. When you're in the car, you're not living the fire.
We're going to get a lot of angry cards and letters for this discussion. I know that.
Well, I think it's common sense firefighting, and that's what we don't have anymore.
Yes, I know, and more's the pity. And it's not only related to that. It's just crazy in so many ways. But, everybody's going to do them, and they're, guys who have already... here's the problem with the fire service, too. Guys stake out territory. They make these policies, this is how I think it ought to be, and then they can never back off it. So even if they're proven wrong, they're still going down with the ship. They're still, my way is the right way. There's no more, you know what? You talked me into it. There's no more, you know what? I see what you're saying. You changed my mind. There's no more of that. Everybody now is just, 100%. That's it, bro.
I think a good example of this is the portable ground ladder and how at one time, not long ago, it was very common to empty the entire bed and throw every ladder against the building without an understanding of position versus purpose. Yeah. You still see it. You don't see it as much as often, I think, because the message has been clear that the portable ground ladder is merely just a bridge to gain position. The mission is inside the fire building. That's what we have to really drill into this next generation, because portable ladders, for whatever reason, I feel that they're a little intimidating on the fireground for people to learn and to work with, and people mask it. They don't admit it, but anytime they say, you know what, we're going to drill in portable ladders today, everyone's heart rate goes up just a little bit, because it's almost one of those tools that it's overthought. If we understand where to throw it and use it as a bridge, that's all it is. It's just a bridge to gain position on the fire building and the missions inside the fire building. I know we've talked about this in the past, but it's something that bothers you as well. I think we're getting a little bit better, but we're still seeing a lot of ladders thrown. I think that's...
For a while, it was that really out of hand.
Yeah.
And there are still guys out there pushing that message, strip the truck. Well, if you really want to have a lot of ladders thrown, the working trucks should not be doing it. Fast truck coming in, let them do it. Special call another truck, let them do it. Don't have your first and second due truck or even a second alarm truck doing that. They have other priorities that are more important. They may need to raise ladders to get where they're going, as you say. It's a bridge to an objective, But just to say, oh, I need a ladder at every window is a little bit nuts. And that leads me to another thing, too, aerial ladders. Yeah, it's true you should have more than one way off a roof if possible, and it's not always possible. But, when I was on the job, it was like, okay, let's try to throw 2 ladders up to the roof in different positions so that guys have an alternate way off the roof. Now what do I see? I see 2 aerial ladders both going to the same spot. Useless and a waste of manpower. The idea is an alternate exit route, like on a different side of the building or on the rear of the building. If 2 aerial ladders are going up from opposite sides and they're basically forming a triangle when they get to where they're going, one of them is wasted. Second due is wasted. And in a short-staffed department where they don't leave a guy on the turntable, they just raise the ladder and then they forget about it, that guy is a wasted resource. He's putting up a ladder that you don't need at that time. He could be doing a search. He could be venting. He could be doing something else other than throwing the useless ladder. Now, if you really want to get 2 ladders out of the bed and really don't have a way to raise that second ladder to a different position than where the first one is, put it to a window or something, Make it an exit route instead of, now I don't have to throw a ground ladder to that window. I got the aerial go. Do something creative. Don't just think I must put this ladder to the roof.
That's a product of social media, is that everyone wants to position, not park, and there's value in that, but we have to realize there's a purpose to where we put the aerial ladder.
Absolutely.
And you have to get creative, like you said, in doing that. Maybe that is taking the alley, coming out off a block on the backside, coming through a yard with it. But
yeah,
thinking outside the box sometimes is looking within the box, and that's hard to do for a lot of guys under stress on arrival. But you can reposition. When you put those outriggers down, it's not cemented. You can always, as the fire progresses, you can move things around. That's something, too, that doesn't get talked about a lot, is we make room for tower ladders sometimes. Maybe we have to just make room to reposition, rethink, get out, take that breath, see the fire a little bit differently as the fire progresses, and then reposition the rig maybe,
Yeah. We're so caught up in doing, I guess the way I would say it is a lot of guys today want a chart. What am I supposed to do with this fire? I'm supposed to do 1, 2, 3, 4, A, B, C, D. And that's what they do, whether it's appropriate or not. Mm-hmm. And that's where the 2 aerial ladders meeting in a triangle come in. That's where useless ground ladders come in. That's where a lot of things happen because all the guys know is I was told to do this in this order. I understand part of that is a lack of experience. They might not know what the alternatives are, but then that's a breakdown in training, You have to discuss these things. I think YouTube fires are invaluable, and people like to say, well, it's a short clip of a fire, this and that. That's true to an extent, but you really can see a lot. And you really can make a lot of, critiques, criticisms, or, hey, that's a good thing that they did on there by watching these YouTube fires.
It's like watching tape in sports. If you study the game, you should be watching tape. If you're not in the firehouse, if you're not reading, you should be watching tape.
Absolutely.
I believe that. Call me a buff if you want, but I'm not looking at it and looking at the big red fire truck. I'm looking at fire development. I'm looking at fire behavior. I'm looking at rig positioning. Yeah. As far as going back to the ladder thing, let's take it one step further and kind of blend the 2 concepts between the portable ladder versus you're talking about like more of a private dwelling type roof with the 2 aerials going to the roof. Let's bring it down to the term taxpayer and what that really means and the importance of the ground ladders at a taxpayer and why we take the aerial ladder. And a lot of times we just dismiss it, which, yes, it's written that we have to get the tower ladders in the front, but find an alternate way to get that stick up to the roof for a second means of egress. That's very important to do that.
Absolutely, 100%. And I know it's a little more difficult now. The jacking procedures are a little more difficult than they were back in the day and so on. But I still think one chauffeur can get an aerial ladder to a roof quicker than two guys can get a 35 to a roof.
Oh yeah,
I
absolutely.
still believe that. And I used to do that all the time, just me, myself. And we had manual jacks on my rig. It was a tiller. And if I was the chauffeur, I would just hop out, set the jacks, get the ladder to the roof. Done. There we are, And with a taxpayer, there's no reason why that can't be the first means of access to the roof.
Yeah.
And then figure out ground ladders for the second one, aerial ladder for the second one, whatever it is.
I think that the term taxpayer gets blurred, like we've talked about many times.
Yeah.
But there's reasons why that definition matters. And, because it's not recognized to the national building standard, that people made up their own terminology across the nation and it adapts to what they do in their environment, in their home court. But that's not the purpose of the actual word. For us, it means very different things than what it may mean somewhere else. I mean, it's a 2-story building, and it's commercial only, right?
Yeah, although I will say in Newark, in many cases, that second floor was converted into apartments.
And then would you switch it to mixed occupancy on arrival? If you pull up and it's a 1 to 2 story building, if you pull up and it's 2 stories with residential above, are you changing your terminology?
If you know that's what's going on. You don't always till you get in
true.
there. Because they're not necessarily changing the windows or anything, I mean, you can get faked out. But what I think has happened is guys misuse jargon that they hear, and they hear the word taxpayer without really knowing what it means, but they want to say that. Oh, yeah, that's taxpayer fire. No, it's not a taxpayer. It's a 3-story building. It can't possibly be a taxpayer because they're only 1 or 2 stories. And as you say, originally the concept was you would have stores on the first floor, some types of offices or storage on the second floor. And even the construction's different. The taxpayers really and truly were not as strongly built as a mixed occupancy or any building that was intended to be there.
They were originally built to be torn down as the population moved north in the island of Manhattan.
Yeah.
They were going to tear down those lots where they built the taxpayer to pay the taxes and then build multiple dwellings as the population increased. With that, these landowners got smart and they said, okay, this fire building or the building itself, which becomes the fire building, is paying the taxes.
Yeah.
They got smart and they subdivided it up to multiple storefronts. Now we have a fire building versus the fire store. Mm-hmm. So now we're paying the taxes, creating revenue. Let's not tear this down. Let's make some money.
Yeah.
And they're built like shit. They're incredibly dangerous fires. And how it affects us, and going back to ground ladders and all these things, is that when you have a row of stores and one's a quote-unquote true taxpayer, and what that meaning really means is that you're taking your portable ladders and you're boxing out on the exposure A or one side, the actual fire building. The fire store may be mid-span of that building. Say it's the cap stand on fire. Get the portable ladder up at the Chinese store and the bodega. That's the fire building. Now you as the chief in the street and the command staff looking up saying, that's my fire building. That's what I'm dealing with.
Yeah.
And now on the roof, if something was to go wrong, you go to the front 2 corners, you have a second means of egress.
Yeah.
Common sense firefighting, but this comes down to the true meaning of what that term is and why it's so important that we understand what it is. Because when I'm pulling out of quarters and I know I'm going to report of a taxpayer fire, my stomach doesn't feel right sometimes because they're dangerous fires. There might not be a second means of egress because that taxpayer was partitioned up into separate stores, and the only point of second means of egress may be in the Chinese store. The fire's in the cap stand. One way in, one way out. Tempo of that fire is a lot different if we did have a second means of egress. So, I don't know. It's something to talk about, but it's also something I think that we have to get on the same page on a national level because it is getting thrown around too much. And again, I think because the National Building Code doesn't recognize it.
And guys don't understand what they're talking about, plain and simple.
Yeah.
They hear the term, they don't even bother to find out what the real definition of it is. They just start using it, and they use it incorrectly. Here's what I always say about it. You guys invented the term, you own it. Whatever you say it is, it is. I mean, to me, that's what it boils down to. And you defined it in a certain way according to building construction and occupancy. And that's what it means.
Yeah.
That's what it means, period.
And what that means to me, pulling out of quarters, is that this tempo of this fire is
Yeah.
going to be a little bit different than if it was going to a mixed occupancy.
Yeah.
The floor above is a lot different at a mixed occupancy than it would be at a taxpayer fire.
So I think one thing needs to be stressed. Whatever the building is, whether it's a 2-story, 3-story, 6-story, high-rise, whatever it is, just because there's a store on the first floor doesn't make it a taxpayer.
No.
And I think that's where a lot of guys get tripped up too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that goes in line with line selection as well. Like most times we want to stretch a 2.5. I mean, that's been rewritten. We know that. But if that's your choice of a line, it's going to be a 2.5. You're never bringing a 2.5 into a mixed occupancy to the floor above in a 6-story mixed occupancy tenement. Yeah. You're not doing it, right? So, but you might bring a 2.5 to the floor above in a taxpayer if you can pull that off.
Yeah.
So depends on the fire load.
Yeah, different things are going on with that. Guys are using 2-inch lines now.
Yeah.
And, but the point being is when it's a taxpayer fire, you better make sure you have the volume and the reach with your stream without getting into the weeds of what exact line you should or shouldn't be using. Volume and reach, that's what you need to guarantee that you have.
Yeah. And from the truck standpoint, when you're responding from the roof firefighter standpoint, you get a fire in a taxpayer, you're going up and cutting that roof. You're responding to a 6-story mixed occupancy, which some may call a taxpayer. It's a total different mind shift. Now you're going to the roof of a 6-story building, getting the bulkhead probably.
Yeah.
Just doing a size up, getting that perimeter. And you're kind of missing the fire, to be honest,
Yeah. So there's a lot of things to be aware of. And again, get out and learn your district, because the town where I grew up, I'm very familiar with a lot of the stores in the central business district because I was a volley in that town. And since then, I've had some good friends who are store owners. And I know there's spots there where you could have 4 stores in a row. You go around the back and there's only one rear door.
Mm-hmm.
And when you force that door, now you're in a hallway that's going down the whole width of the taxpayer. And now there's another interior door to force for each occupancy.
Yeah.
So just by going around the back and saying, I got the rear door open.
Not good enough.
Not good enough.
Yeah.
You got to take a look inside and see what's really going on in there.
It's important, too, for the OV standpoint or any firefighter that goes to the rear to get eyes on the rear. If you do realize that there's no second means of egress, that's an urgent message. Everyone has to know that you're operating in a commercial building with one way in and one way out. Now, line orientation takes a whole different way of looking at things. I'm operating ahead and off the line, searching for the fire. When I hear there's no second means of egress, that front door gets smaller and smaller and smaller the farther and deeper you go to find that fire towards the rear. So now I'm thinking, where is that line? Are they advancing line? Are they still on the sidewalk? I want to know exactly where that line is, because now if you get disoriented, you get fucked up.
Yeah.
It's bumps to pumps. And basics, going back to a learned behavior that you can use for survival. But then also, it's harnessing the guys. My guys are they're pipples off the leash. They're just running. Not running, but they want to go to work. Once I hear there's no second means of egress, all right, guys, listen, did you hear that? Dial it back just a little bit till we get the line in position. It just changes the tempo of the fire when you hear there's no second means of egress from the rear of a commercial building.
Yeah. Let's talk about one thing, too, that I think is important in these taxpayer fires is as soon as you get inside the front door, an inspection hole needs to be made in the ceiling to make sure the fire hasn't already gotten up to the front of the store. We've had cases where guys have gone in with the line and made that push for the rear of the store because it looks to them like, well, it's a kitchen fire or whatever, it's in the rear of the store. Meanwhile, it got into the ceiling and it's already up to the front of the store. You don't want to be 25 feet deep when the ceiling drops. So I believe in making just a little inspection hole.
Absolutely.
And make sure that fire didn't come up to the front of the store.
I had that fire the other day. We went in and I had the camera. I looked up. We were in the exposure. It was kind of hot along where the fire side of that exposure was meeting the fire building. I wanted to open that area. But before we committed to that, I had the guy poke a hole right before he came in. we get back to the fires. I go, do you know why I asked you to do that? He was a probie. He knew right off the bat. So I'm glad he knew that. It means that they're teaching the right thing in probie school, but he knew right away why to do that and how to do that, which was very important. And it was with the 10-foot hook, which is even harder to work with that, you know?
Sure, absolutely.
But it's an important step that I constantly see that miss. You go back and look at fires afterwards. That's the first thing I'm looking for. Did the company do that? Fuck, they didn't do it, bro. Come here, listen, you know? It's an important thing you do.
Absolutely.
And now with lithium-ion batteries, they're storing these in the rear of these taxpayers, of supermarkets, wherever it may be. It's not up front that they're always charging them. More up front when you're dealing with a fireproof multiple dwelling where they bring them right in and plug them in. When we're dealing with the commercial building and lithium-ion batteries, the storage rooms are in small closets that were once closets in the rear that were for storage. Now it's charging stations. Or it's the storage room for a supermarket where the guys take their e-bikes and they bring them in and they charge them. When those batteries are failing, it's pressurizing the cockle off with superheated gases that are extremely flammable. So now we're pulling up to fires within 3-4 minutes on arrival, and the entire cockle off is roaring front to rear. You don't see it from the street until you pop a little hole and realize the entire cockle off is a sea of fire from lithium-ion battery that failed deep-seated into a store. That door might be closed. You might have a haze on arrival, but above you is roaring.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%.
I think we're just not good at fighting these fires. We've proven on a national level that we're not good at fighting commercial building fires. How do we get better? I think it's by controlling tempo. This comes into the word aggressive, which I don't want to go down that. You know, I don't really believe in that word. But when we teach and preach, a lot of times through social media, that aggressive is speed, we're setting them up for failure. Aggressiveness is not speed. 100%. Aggressiveness is understanding the details. It's wearing your gear the right way. It's all these things, right? But it's definitely not speed, and that's where we get blurred. So how do we get better at commercial building fires? Is being able to dial the tempo back a little bit.
Absolutely, 100%. Speed kills. Speed kills. It's wrong-headed. The debate over running or not running on a fireground will never, ever be solved in my lifetime, which is probably not that long at this point. But for the younger guys on the job, it'll never be solved during your lifetime either.
Yeah.
It just won't be. It's one of those things. But speed kills. You need to have the proper pace so that you can size up what's going on, size up the building, size up the fire conditions. Think about what your moves are going to be, you know? Look at where the windows are so that when you're inside doing the search, you have an idea. Yeah, I remember there were 3 windows going down the side of the building. So if, you know, I turn this way and then turn that way, I'm coming to a window on the side of the building. You have to be thinking about stuff like that. This is no place for the bull in the china shop.
Yeah.
It's just not.
That's how you and I actually ultimately met, was through running on the fireground debate, which, looking back, you know, I feel like if you're truly debating this, you don't understand the fireground. That's why you're just like, yeah, it is what it is. I mean, we could talk about it all day long, but if you debate this conversation, you don't understand the fireground, that there's a tempo to every fire you go to. Yeah. It's calculation frontwards is very important. We have to be calculating frontwards in everything we do. The Navy SEALs have a slogan, don't run to your death.
Yeah.
Right? So why are we running anywhere in the fireground? It's common sense. Again, basic firefighting that we've lost, and I think because people want to die on that hill. It worked for them at one time. They trained on it. They drilled on it. They talked about it, and now they die on that hill.
That's what I was saying earlier. Guys who stake out turf, and then they can't back off it, you know?
And I think that he probably made a lot more mistakes by running, but they can't back off it, like you said.
I mean, before I make definitive statements, I make sure pretty well that I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
A lot of these guys don't. I think a huge problem in the fire service right now, with all these guys that are out there on the circuit and with all these guys that are posting on social media, lack of experience. And they'll tell you, oh, well, I go to 50 fires a year. I do this. What's the quality? What's the type of fire you're going to? Because by what you're preaching, I know you haven't been exposed to a whole lot of what can happen on the fireground. I know that you've mostly been going to fires in small private dwellings that have been 1 or 2 room fires. I know that you haven't gone to fires that can really take off within the interior of a building in practically no time at all. This is just a huge problem. Guys are either inexperienced and don't realize they are, or they're inexperienced and just think, well, too bad. I'm talking anyway. I want to be famous. I want to be the star on Instagram, whatever, you know?
I think a lot of it has to do with knowing what arena you're playing in. If you know your arena, then your experience transcends to what that arena is. If you're playing at the highest arena, you have to be able to understand the experience within that arena. If you're playing in a small arena, minor league ball, there's a different level of experience and professionalism there. And the problem is that with social media, with the circuit, and with all that micro conferences, which are great, I'm telling you, they're great. And I'm a opportunity to go to do a lot of these, and you meet some really great people. But the lines do get blurred sometimes, and when we start comparing arenas, and nobody wants to talk about the reality of that arena.
Yeah, you know. So statements that are very dangerous wind up getting, like, we can put out any fire with tank water. Okay, you go right on thinking that.
Yeah,
you know. I mean,
tank water is great for a private dwelling, 1 or 2 rooms. Tank water is great when you have a frozen hydrant just to get water in the fire. But we have to realize, thinking forward, thinking firemen 10 steps ahead, where are we going to be in a very short time?
Yeah, exactly.
When we don't get that fire with the tank water, what's next?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So, and these are the kind of things that come from guys who think they have more experience than they do, and they just don't have it. You know, they're not aware of what the potentialities are.
Was this a problem during your peak of your career? Was this a problem similar to what we have? Obviously, we didn't have social media, but you had guys going to fires. Were there guys out there that felt that they were on the same level as, say, a rescue company in Newark during the war years, and you could talk to them, but you couldn't really talk to them?
I think there were guys like that, but they were less obvious because they didn't have that platform. Mm-hmm. You would meet them more like one-on-one, or you would meet them in a classroom. As an instructor back in those days, I would often get 1 or 2 guys that raise, excuse me, you know, and give you the whole 9 yards about why they know more than you do, or as much as you do, or whatever. So the guys were always out there, but they were kind of undercover more. Now, with everybody having equal access to the platform, it's more rampant.
Yeah.
But I think the reverse of that coin is that back in those days, most of the people who were out on the circuit were more experienced, vetted people who really did have the chops and the resume, the qualifications to talk about what they were talking about.
And I think that generation, your generation, there was a sense of humility and equal respect for one another, where I don't see that so much now. The equal respect doesn't really exist. Humility is just a word. It's a hashtag now. It's not how people truly conduct themselves. And it's, you know, we forget that this job truly is bigger than us as individuals.
Yeah.
But the social media world, they like to say that it's bigger and better than what they are as individual. But ultimately, it comes down to, not everyone, but a lot of platforms out there that it's lacking for what they can do on the fireground. So they make it up with social media, to put it in a polite way, I guess you would say, you know. But
yeah. So, I mean, hardly a day goes by when I don't see something good on social media. Hardly a day goes by when I don't get pissed off on social media.
It's, you know, there's a lot of doom and gloom with everything. People generating problems for their own platforms. But I think that the fire service, is fucked up as it is right now, we are still pretty much in a good place. It's still the greatest job in the world. It's not the job that it was during your prime. It's probably not the job during my prime, even though I feel like I'm still in my prime because I still love it that much. I don't ever want to retire, but it could be better. And that comes down to paying attention to the details and teaching the details, getting back to the standards.
Yeah.
All right, buddy. Anything else before we wrap it up?
Well, if there's always something else, I think it would be more appropriate to say, Let's do this again real soon.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks for your time, Pete. Love
Thank you for getting together with me.
No, yeah, this is my favorite conversations are the ones that I have with you. I absolutely
appreciate
treasure those
that.
times with you, and I've learned
They're
so
great-
much. Yeah,
They're great talks. They're
Yeah.
great talks. And we don't. I mean, we do it enough among you and I, but we don't do it often enough on a microphone or on a camera.
yeah.
So
So thank you for coming out and doing this.
my pleasure.
All right, brother.
Okay.